Former United States President Theodore Roosevelt articulated perhaps one of the most powerful forward-thinking statements that can be applied to today's law enforcement citizen interactions. No man is above the law, and no man is beneath it, nor do we ask any man's permission when we ask him to obey it. Obedience to the law is demanded as a right, not asked as a favor. In this tutorial on real criminal justice reform, we will review and apply Roosevelt's and other legal perspectives to the 5 pillars of police legitimacy and procedural justice. Constitutional policing approaches with the goal of minimizing interactions between law enforcement officers and citizens from escalating into out-of-control events. I am Charles Rambo, a retired lieutenant commander with over 30 years of real-world law enforcement expertise in a major county sheriff's office. Certified as a senior instructor by the Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training Council, I have taught hundreds of law enforcement officers in subjects not limited to criminal procedure and constitutional law. At the turn of this century, I was also honored with an invitation to a small group forum with the Attorney General and Deputy Attorneys from the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. From this meeting, I emerged and developed one of the first comprehensive and prevention plans, rooting out the generationally adopted mindsets and behaviors contributing to racial profiling. Staying consistent with what the time demands to the profession that I love, I have designed and delivered curriculum on the Georgia Governor's Initiative on Police Legitimacy, Procedural Justice, and Community Relations. I also have pioneered curriculum and thought leadership on constitutional policing before thousands of global students enrolled in my online courses. Currently, I am honored to serve on an educational committee with mental health counselors and clinical psychiatrists, exploring how neuroscience can play a very revolutionary role in de-escalation tactics that law enforcement officers can use when responding to calls for services in diverse communities. Unlike any public sector profession, law enforcement is a function where the dynamics of human thinking and generationally adopted customs have flowed to the execution of its great power and authority. And today, given that the law enforcement authority has the most significant impact on the people that you serve, the time demands transformations of the mindsets of law enforcement cultures to the centrics of constitutional accountability, transparency, and legitimacy when interacting with the public. We begin by defining legitimacy as the ability to measure the value of something with logic, validity, and justification by established laws and rules. Within the context of this definition, police legitimacy therefore becomes the idea and belief that the police have the authority or right to dictate proper behavior and enforce the law. Now, within this definition, we find the key words right and authority that underscore the consent of the people when interacting with law enforcement officers incident to a search, seizure, or an arrest. And it matters not if you occupy a position in the public office through election or appointment. Your validation to dictate proper behavior must be aligned with the authority of your oath and the right as a sacred trust by the people you serve, that you will exercise competent authority in the administration of the criminal law. Placing Roosevelt's wisdom into the context of police legitimacy, it solidifies that when a code of law has been broken, you are the first contact of the government's legitimate interest to provide equal and unbiased response to the diverse communities of your jurisdiction. Through the precise knowledge of your authority and man's rights to be treated according to the rules of justice. While he may not like it, punishment for his behavior will be most acceptable when he feels that the accuracy of criminal procedures brought against him did not infringe upon any rights guaranteed by the state and federal constitutions. Now that you understand that you are entrusted with great rights and authority to dictate proper behavior, Let's consider the next level of wisdom by former United States Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis with application to the law enforcement citizen encounter. In the case of Olmstead versus the United States, he dissents towards procedural justice to declare that in the administration of the criminal law, the end justifies the means, to declare that the government may commit crimes to secure the conviction of a private criminal would bring terrible retribution. So in my signature Socratic style of teaching, I ask you to constitutionally consider, are the terrible retributions concerning law enforcement citizen interactions an unintended consequence of the objective goals of legitimate policing? Or is the retribution a direct response to the historical motivations, interpretations, and applications by those who circumvent constitutions with subjective right and authority to dictate proper behavior? From sheriffs to police chiefs, you are the alter ego and superior respondeats of how the workforce will execute the legitimate governmental interest in fighting crime with assertive accountability and transparency. And your imperative as a leader in charge of change must go beyond a program of the month and initiative of the year to restore public trust. It begins with the unequivocal understanding that the fundamental rights of man are bestowed by the Creator and just so happen to be memorialized in state and federal constitutions. It follows up with your bold leadership, transforming the mindsets of the organizational culture away from the historical biases and cultural parochialism about who is and is not a citizen and how they should act. And it must be recognized that regardless of the communities that you serve, people have the right to pursue their life's goals and happiness so long as they are not infringing upon the rights of others. Every person within the reasonable expectation of privacy fundamentally has this legitimate and sovereign right to be free from governmental infringements. You can take it or leave it alone, but this is where this tutorial is consistent with what the time demands for enjoining you to truth and patience, from the Magna Carta to the United States Constitution, an imperative for a greater understanding by you of the law and your actions and its impact on the people that you serve. Take, for example, the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution, and as identified in your state's constitution, which guarantees the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. With this constitutional clarity, we now turn to the profound wisdom of former Sheriff Thomas Gilmore of Greene County, Alabama, in his wisdom incident to search, seizure, or an arrest. When I arrest someone, I believe my approach is more important than my authority. Now, I am certain his wisdom was dependent upon the totality of the circumstances at the time of an incident to search, seizure, or arrest. But I believe Sheriff Gilmore was teaching us that a person must clearly understand the purpose of your intervention. And, most critical, to avoid claims of interactional discrimination, the person should clearly understand that in the intervention, do they have the right to vacate your presence without the fear of the use of force? Further, applying the wisdom of Sheriff Gilmore to the landmark case of Mapp versus Ohio, here are two constitutionally based questions that you should consider in every future call for service. Number one, am I legally here? How did I get this call for service? Through dispatch, plain sight observations, or reliable leads from a credible source? Your lawful presence is the legal right and authority to take the most direct action towards resolution or forwarding a person into the criminal justice system. And number two, the most important question, can you legally seize the person, contraband, or other fruits of the crime? And candidly speaking, and I'm sure the judiciary will agree, please stop clogging up the criminal justice system with incomplete and incompetent cases. Every process depends upon a concise incident report built on solid probable cause, indisputable facts and circumstances that the district attorney or solicitor general can prosecute beyond a reasonable doubt. And if you cannot affirmatively answer the first question about the legitimacy of your lawful presence, everything that you submitted will likely be suppressed. And please, most critical, stop undermining the integrity of your official capacity and the profession by trumping up charges when the facts and circumstances of your case do not justify the legitimacy of your approach to a search, seizure, or an arrest. Having constitutionally considered the combined wisdom of President Roosevelt, Justice Brandeis, and Sheriff Gilmore. Here are the 5 pillars of police legitimacy and procedural justice that you can recall in any interaction to influence trust and purpose in your legitimate right and authority to compel people to proper behavior. And it is duly noted that nothing in this tutorial will ever suggest that you must sacrifice your safety or that of a third party to an encounter that otherwise would escalate to potential seriously bodily harm or death. Number 1, maintain lawful operations. Ensure your actions are consistent with the rules of law. Number 2, keep approaches neutral. Take the most direct action according to the facts and circumstances of the incident. Number 3, treat citizens with dignity and respect by engaging people regardless of sex, race, religion, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic status with the same dignity that you would want to be treated with in an off-duty capacity. Number 4, actively listen by giving people in your custody an opportunity to be heard. And number 5, establish trustworthiness by being just and unbiased in your actions. When you put these 5 pillars into real-time performance, I bear witness that having made numerous traffic stops and responding to calls for service, in perhaps the most challenging time of the crack epidemic, people are more likely to obey the law when they believe that those that are enforcing it have the authority and right that they perceive as legitimate. And finally, in paraphrasing the wisdom of diplomat and legal expert Emir de Vattel, the golden rule of sovereigns, you, the sovereign of the state, have the absolute right to pursue your life's objectives within a reasonable expectation of privacy. However, when you lack self-discipline and commit a wrong, you are amenable to the courts of justice through proper and necessary codes for punitive action. So yes, you too have an equal accountability for exercising emotional intelligence when interacting with law enforcement officers. Your responses and de-escalations are critical to neutralizing and resolving the interaction. And this does not mean that your cooperation is a sign of weakness or docility or subservient to a law enforcement officer's presence. Your cooperation is the hallmark of a sovereign's right and responsibility to treat others as you desire to be treated in the free society. This Learn and Lead tutorial on real criminal justice reform has provided you with a transformational mindset to execute law enforcement functions with legitimate rights, authority, and constitutional competence. Please like, subscribe, and share our channel, dedicated to empowering a new generation of criminal justice leaders just like you to enjoin the people that you serve with legitimate authority, accountability, and transparency.